Why'd you elbow me in the back, Kevin?
I know, I felt so bad.
Hey, Kevin, you got any guts? Jerk. In California, maybe that's what you do. You come up with somebody and you take a cheap shot at them. But not in Tennessee. That's no, we handle things eye to eye.
John, that was East Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett with a confrontation involving former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy, no fan of Representative Burchett because Burchett was one of the votes that got him out of office, out of that job at least. That happening, and that caught a lot of eyes across the country.
Yep, last fall, and I was over at the courthouse, and somebody who was in Washington on the Hill actually texted me and said, "Do you know what just happened between Burchett and McCarthy?" And I'm like, "What?" And he told me about that this has just happened. It's ironic to me, John, and still is, because Tim Burchett sat right there in January, I believe it was in January of 2023, talking about how McCarthy had ascended with the help of people like Tim Burchett and Matt Gaetz. And then, as you said, he was one of 8 who turned on McCarthy, voted against him. McCarthy denied it. He was like, "Oh, I never did anything like that." Well, we have to think something happened, but it's still very much a sore spot on the Hill.
It is. Director Dunn, we've seen duels in Washington before. As you mentioned, there's a history of conflict.
It's a great Broadway play that touched on it.
Exactly.
That's right. Very, very good.
One thing I wanted to ask your thoughts on, I heard someone say this, I think it was the Whole Foods CEO say, he looks at ideas as though they are clothing. He puts on a jacket and he says, "You know what, this jacket fits pretty well and I like its style, it seems to move with me." And then maybe a year or 2 down the line, the jacket looks outdated and it doesn't fit quite like he thought it did. And he pulls that off. He said, why can't that be like ideas where something sounds good, we work on it, and then we change? No, this seems like if you change your ideas, you've changed your very principle.
Well, I think the evidence, again, shows that we do that far more often than we think. To advertise an event that we're having at the Baker School and the Institute in April, we have an event called The Myth of Left and Right, which really goes in to the history of these categories and shows how that they've shifted consistently over time. Now, what we have seen, though, is that I think sometimes people become attached to personalities in politics increasingly in this age, and they've said, well, if you don't support this person, then somehow you have defected from the coalition. But you've seen both parties switch on some pretty significant issues just within the past 10 years. So I don't know that that's not all that common. I think it does happen where people will do it, but often it's done for electoral reasons or reasons sometimes driven by attachment to particular people, so kind of personality-driven politics that, again, these structural factors have given an incentive to engage in. So I think it can happen, but perhaps it's the idea that we aren't willing to do it is maybe a bit overstated.
What's your solution?
I think that there are some structural reforms that would help that relate to political parties. I think it would help for parties to actually be able to have maybe a little bit more authority and control over their own boundaries, and particularly through the nomination process. I don't know that that's likely to happen. I do think, though, that eventually what is going to happen is that the American people are just going to have to demand that their representatives, the people who they elect, to engage in a way that they find appropriate. And some of that is going to require the American citizens to move beyond the things that we're all attached to. We have our phones, we're on our social media, but I think that we can do this. If you look back at American history, we've been deeply divided before in the past, and we've moved through it. I think other nations around the world often look at America and recognize that we have immense reserves of social and political capital. So it's not something that we can't do.
Do you think it's a lack of education starting at younger ages? I mean, I know kids that don't know that we have 3 branches of government, and we quit teaching.
I know a lot of adults that don't know that.
I know a lot of adults that are that way too. Yeah. And I know I taught school many years ago, and I taught civics and political science in middle school. That doesn't happen any longer, and we really have a breadth of no knowledge.
Or
about
now,
it.
if it does, it happens, it must be along one stripe or the other.
Right, but it's.
Yeah.
I'm really, it concerns me that we aren't teaching children and high schoolers and in college, to be honest, enough about civics.
So if you look history, now we still do have some requirements related to civics and the study of American politics, but it's not as much as students used to have to study in elementary school grades, junior high and high school. And if you look at surveys, it turns out that again, even college graduates have very low levels of knowledge about our political system, and that certainly can't be helpful. I do think that a constitutional system like ours requires that voters just be informed about the basic mechanics of our system of government. And again, that's what I hope that we're going to be doing to help address at the Institute.
Would you agree we're better or worse off for the now immense amount of money that comes into politics? Because that is the one thing that you can say has changed, even if sort of the divisiveness is cyclical within American politics.
So I think it's not so much the amount of money, but how it's directed. Instead of it being obvious who's accountable for how the money is being spent, we've created a system where it's divided up and it's split into it's sent out to different organizations and interest groups, where it used to be much more concentrated, and so you could hold groups accountable. And so I think that's in the end a more fundamental problem.
Director Dunn, we appreciate your perspective. We're grateful that you're doing this work at the University of Tennessee and the Baker School.
Thank you.
We'll have you back, and we'll be back on Inside Tennessee right after this.